Oh, here we go. Aidan.
Hi, Roy. You okay, mate?
Hi, everyone. Aidan would like to start for Sky, thank you.
Yeah, no problem at all. Can I start with some injury news, please, Roy? How's Gary Cahill?
Yeah, not very good, I'm afraid. It was a nasty injury, so we're still assessing it. He won't be able to play tomorrow unless there's something miraculous happens overnight. But I'm hopeful it might not be one that will keep him out for weeks on end. But it's too soon, I'm afraid, after the kick that he took to put him in the game tomorrow.
Have you had much communication with Jordan Ayew in the last week after his positive test for COVID? I thought you missed him against Brighton.
Yeah, we've spoken a couple of times on the phone, of course, because he's self-isolating. But the last time I spoke to him, which I think was the day before yesterday, he was feeling very, very good. He certainly felt he had no symptoms and was just disappointed, of course, that the test had come up negative and he'd had to self-isolate and miss what is now going to amount to 2 games.
One shot on target against Brighton. I know you touched on it last week, but is it a concern for you as a coach, seeing as you invested quite significantly in your forward options in the summer?
Yeah, but once again, I'm in the realm of statistics, which I'm not a great lover of. I don't follow up to stats. I think that's more for gambling companies and for people like yourself to be able to ask the sort of question. It wasn't so long ago against Man United and Everton where people were actually speaking unbelievably highly of our attacking play and the quality that we were showing when we had the ball. The fact that we didn't do so on Sunday against Brighton and received criticism for that. That's part and parcel of the game. We're pretty critical of ourselves in that instance, but it's not something which I'm expecting to be taken forward from game to game. And I'm pretty sure that the players can be very anxious tomorrow to make certain that they show what qualities they do have on the ball, and that we are more than capable of creating goal chances. Because creating goal chances and creating a little bit of havoc in the opposing team's penalty area is far more important to me than shots, because if it was that important, we'll get one in from the kickoff tomorrow, so that will mean we'll only need one more to beat our record of the previous week.
Well, we've seen this unusual start to the season in terms of the results. I don't think many either would have had Everton and Villa in the top 2 even after 5 games, with City down 11th, United down in 15th. Various theories have been advanced as to why this has occurred, but what do you think yourself?
No, I don't have a theory, and I just think 5 games is too small a sample, quite frankly. It's always seemed to me in football seasons there's a team or two that have started and done a lot better than maybe has been predicted, and there's a couple of teams at the other end, but it's not 5 games that decide things. It's not even 20 games that decides things. But certainly I don't think you should be making any tremendous predictions or suggestions that this or that will happen before at least half of the season has been played. So one congratulates the teams that have had a great start, and Everton and Aston Villa must be delighted and deserve the praise they're getting. But I'm pretty sure that the 2 managers there, they know full well that let's take the praise, let's be glad for it, but it doesn't mean too much until many more games have been played.
What are your thoughts on a possible European Premier League that's been mooted by some this week? Does it show that top clubs are determined to break away, and it's perhaps, sadly, just a matter of time before it happens in one form or other?
No, I'm not quite as pessimistic about it as that. Of course, like most people, I'm not in favour of it. I'm in favour of the current system where there are very good leagues in all of the top European countries, and we have a Champions League and even a Europa League, which I think is dealing very, very well with our desire to see our top teams play against top teams from other nations. So I think we've got that at the moment, and I'm a great admirer and supporter of the Premier League. And I would be very disappointed to see a breakaway league, because it certainly won't be advantageous, in my opinion, for domestic football. And that's not just in England, that's in all European countries. But I don't really subscribe to the theory it's going to be an awful lot better for European football either, because I think we've got that well covered with the Champions League, with the Europa League, which is heavily biased still in favour of the top teams in the big league. So, for example, Malmö reaching the final in 1979 under Bob Houghton, we can forget those things happening now because of the bias that's been really pushed towards making certain that the top teams get more than enough chances to get to the finals.
It'll be your first time facing Scott Parker as a manager. You brought him to Euro 2012 as a senior player. I think he was 32 at the time. I presume you must have seen leadership quality in him back in that period. Did you expect that he'd go into management and make a good fist of it?
I'm not at all surprised that he's done so. I must say that I don't really think I could say honestly that while working with players, I've ever considered to any great extent, is this a manager of the future? I suppose I work on the basis that being such good players, and in Scott's case as well, such a big student of the game, it would probably been surprising had he not gone into management. But I'm very pleased to see him doing so well at the job, and I certainly don't have any surprise whatsoever that after his playing career ended, this is the route that he's taken.
Just finally, for me, you're up against the side that's bottom of the table with 1 point from 5 games. Would you be expecting your forward line and your creative players to show a bit more ruthlessness, perhaps, than they did in the last game?
Yes, of course. The last game wasn't one that we were that satisfied with in terms of our attacking play. We were extremely satisfied with it in terms of our defensive play. And I think we can consider ourselves a little bit unfortunate to concede so late in the game and have such a good second goal, which would have killed the game off in our favour, disallowed for a marginal offside. But that game's gone. We got a point from it. We'd have liked all 3, and we'd have liked to have played a little bit better on the ball than we did that day, and we intend to put that straight tomorrow.
Thanks, Troy. Appreciate it.
Pleasure.
Thank you. We now go to Jonathan Overend from Premier League Productions.
Afternoon, Roy.
Afternoon.
Just a thought, first of all, on Fulham, because they were quite busy, weren't they, in the transfer window? How do you see them as having strengthened, and how do you feel they've started the season?
It's difficult for me to say how well they've strengthened because I haven't seen that much of them, and basically the strengthenings were only really visible in the last game against Sheffield United when Scott changed the team and put several of the players that he's just signed in the team to make their debut. But there's no doubt that on paper it looks like they've done extremely well. They done some very good business. I mean, the player that they've signed that I know well, Ruben Loftus-Cheek, is an outstanding signing in my opinion because we have such a high opinion of him here. So we're expecting a very difficult game. They had a difficult start. They seem to be getting better. Their performance against Sheffield United was good. We're 5 games in, and I'm expecting them to build on the Sheffield United performance and move steadily up the table because I think they've got the quality of players to do that, but also the quality of the club as a whole. Basically, I always regard Fulham as a Premiership club.
You've got a good collection of goalkeepers now, Roy, and Jack Butland has the actual number 1 shirt. I'm just wondering how he's settled in and how long before he challenges for the metaphorical number 1 shirt.
Well, it's very unfortunate for Wayne Hennessy, who of course has picked up such a serious injury in the last international break, which was extremely unkind to us, I must say. So we were forced to act because we know that he's going to be out until at least January, and we don't even know then what the future will hold for him if he's able to get fit again. So we needed to bring somebody in. And once again, our misfortune continued because no sooner did Jack come and sign that he was tested positive for coronavirus. So we haven't seen him. He's had to self-isolate. And like Jordan, he's stuck in a hotel room in London in a very boring existence, I can only imagine, waiting for the magical period of time which you have to self-isolate for to pass, to take another test, hopefully be cleared, and then I could really answer your question a bit more about what it's like to have him with us at the moment. He's with us from afar. My only contact with him is by telephone to ask how he's feeling. But the good news is he's feeling very good, very frustrated and very disappointed that all he sees is 4 walls and nothing else at the moment.
And just a final one from me, Ryan, on the role of supporters, in the place of football. I know this isn't a new conversation, but as we get more and more used to these empty grounds, 7.5 months now, does it affect or alter your love of the game?
Well, nothing really, I don't think, will ever impact so badly that it will affect my love of the game. Whether or not the games are as enjoyable, even for us who are the main participants, is a matter for debate. And of course, it's very disappointing. I watched a couple of the Champions League games, in particular the one in Kiev, and you're seeing a game being played in front of 25,000 people. We have stadium which, most of them are 25,000 minimum, going up to 80,000. I find it very hard to understand why that initial suggestion that the fans would be allowed in under controlled circumstances and, maintaining social distance, especially when, pubs in many places are still open. Events are being held indoors, like the one at London Palladium the other day, which attracted a lot of people to hear Arsene speak. All of these things are going on. And I really don't understand why there can't be anyone other than maybe the opposing team's chairman in the stadium watching the game. So I think that until that happens, that we get fans back, even if it's a modified number, we're going to be living with a product which I think is being damaged by the fact that they aren't allowed in and we don't have their support.
Thank you, Roy. Thank
you. Excuse me.
Thank you. Emma Jones from BBC.
Hello, Roy. You've managed so many teams in your career, but obviously you had such success with Fulham. I wonder how fondly you remember your time as their manager.
Well, yeah. Magical time in every respect. The way the job came about, which in itself is a long story, and then the struggle that first season to just try and stay in the league, and really the mysterious and magical way we even achieved that. It was called the Great Escape. There's been plenty of situations with football teams in the Premier League that have been labelled great escapes, but that certainly was my one. And then, of course, the 2 years that followed that, where we went from strength to strength and even culminated in a European final. So I can't think of anything about that time that isn't really sort of sprinkled with some sort of stardust. And it's dangerous because I'm pretty certain there were moments there which weren't as good, and there were difficult moments and moments where I certainly wasn't skipping around believing everything was sprinkled with stardust, but certainly with a 10-year hiatus between that time and now, that's how I view it.
Scott Parker is 40 years old. You're slightly older than that, Roy. I just wonder, do you think the job of being a Premier League manager has become tougher during the time that you've been a manager? And what advice would you give Scott Parker?
He doesn't need advice. He's doing extremely well, and he's got some very experienced people around him as well. He's put together a very good staff in that respect. Has the job become tougher? Yeah, frankly, I think it has. And I think it's become tougher for two reasons. First of all, I think the quality of the Premier League has improved. I think it improves almost year by year. It gets stronger and stronger. And, for the bulk of us who are not eyeing Champions League places, the act of survival becomes a tougher one to pull off every year, because all the teams around you are getting stronger. They're investing in players. They're working hard at their game. You never meet a disorganised team. You never meet a team that will lay down and enable you to run all over them. Every game in this league is a fight. And that's what makes the league so good, of course, because no one really honestly suggests that a team like ours is a better team necessarily than Liverpool or Man City, for example. But we are still able to compete with them, and that goes not just for us, but many, many other teams in a similar position to us. So it's got harder and harder. And the second reason, I think, the pressures get greater. There's no doubt about that. The need to stay in this league with all this pressure on you gets greater too, because everyone realises that if you're unlucky enough to get relegated, getting back up again could be a much more arduous task than maybe it looked 10, 15 years ago. So there's no doubt, in my opinion, that the job gets more and more difficult every year. And, for the young managers coming into the game at that level, if you like, and there aren't that many young ones in actual fact these days, but for the young ones coming in, they really do need to be well prepared for all the challenges they're going to have to face. And ideally, we'll have someone alongside them or somewhere in the club that can, help them keep some sense of perspective, because that's not an easy thing to keep at any time. And certainly the Premier League is not one of the best places to work if you want to have a very clear perspective on your life at any given moment in time.
You mentioned the number of changes that Fulham have made recently. I just wonder how difficult that is for you as the opposing manager to prepare to play them.
Well, we prepare very carefully every week. We start as soon as the last game has ended. We start with our week's preparation on the next team, and we have pretty much all the information that we think we're going to need about the players, if they're new ones that have been brought in. And quite often we know them anyway. Ruben Loftus-Cheek we know well. We perhaps don't know the goalkeeper quite that well, or maybe Aina, the right back, we might not know so well, but all of the other players, Lookman we know very well. So I'm not concerned in that respect. But of course, you're not comparing a team that you've been playing against on a regular basis in the Premier League year after year. It's a team that's just come up in the League One, and two, it's a team that even in the course of 5 games has changed quite considerably. But I don't think that makes a vast difference to our preparation. We've got to prepare to play the Fulham that we've seen playing since the start of the season. We base a lot of it, of course, our analysis on the last game against Sheffield United, because there's a good chance the team won't change enormously from that game to this one. And most importantly of all, we try to work very hard on our own game to make certain that we've got the two pillars of football performance in shape, i.e. defending when we haven't got the ball and doing something with it when we have.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
Okay, thank you. I think that ends the broadcast section. We'll move on to the writers.